Oh, hello, my little beauties, and welcome to this little message from me, David Connolly. I'm on a bit earlier than usual tonight, and I apologise for that. I was actually not going to come on at all. I have one or two things that I'm having to deal with, and I don't want to give it any energy. But I decided I would come on. I'm just putting my phone on. Look at this. I'm just trying to put my phone on airplane mode. There we go. And I thought I would just come on and at least say a few words about something that has happened in the tech industry that is very much worthy of at least one video, I think, And that is the purchasing or the rebirth, shall we say, of Commodore, the company who brought us the Commodore 64. Now, if you never had a Commodore 64, or maybe you weren't even around at the time, you'll probably not quite get what I'm about to say here. But for those of us who were lucky enough to have Commodore 64s, they'll know what I mean when I say that there really was, maybe I should say is, something magical about that computer. Not just the sound card or the sound chip, the SID chip that has been spoken about. I mean, there's some excellent Commodore music you can get here on YouTube. It wasn't just that. It wasn't just the fact that it had, in my opinion, the best keyboard ever. But even the games were fantastic and far better than any of the games that we have today. And some of you are thinking, how can that be? I mean, just look at the graphics and all of that. Well, here's the thing, folks. I don't play computer games, by the way. It's one of the greatest achievements of my adult life. But from what I can tell, most of the computer games today involve either shooting people or driving cars. And that's pretty much it. With the Commodore 64, you had games that involved building a time machine, and traveling back in time. That was actually a game. I believe it was called Time Tunnel. I remember one game where the job was to, from memory, creep around the village at night, go into, I think you went into graveyards and laboratories and stuff, got body parts and built what was effectively Frankenstein's monster. I believe that game was called Mad Doctor. I could go on and on and on. But the games that were out for the Commodore inspired the imagination. And we've lost that, and I think it's a huge loss, There was certainly something very magical about the Commodore computer. Now, I should say also, before I really start on this, I apologise for not having my good friend Mamemeister on board with this video. Perhaps I should have phoned him. I only decided to do this video about 10 minutes ago, so I apologise, but he has an incredibly popular channel that focuses a lot on the Commodore 64. So I'll leave a link to his channel there, and I apologise for not having him on. But I thought that I could give you my take on some of this stuff and perhaps offer a few thoughts on what I would like to see happening with Commodore as we move forward. So, first of all, how do I feel about the whole thing? Well, it's a nostalgia trip. It's just looking back. It's a regurgitation of what once was. It serves no purpose, and what's the point? These are just some of the things that people would say if they were not into this. But I take the opposite path. I think that what's happening with Commodore is the most exciting news to hit the technology space since the rise of ChatGPT. I think it's absolutely huge. I think it's fantastic. I think it does serve a purpose. And the YouTuber who has driven this. His channel's called Retro Recipes. Of course, I'll leave a link. I've watched his channel for a number of years. I don't know him. His channel is very popular. I don't expect to ever meet him. I require no favours, you know. But I think that he's fantastic. I'm so impressed with that guy. Not only does he have what's very obviously an authentic and genuine love of all things Commodore, but the guy is also skilled to the eyeballs. He's really good at electronics, you know, building little things with circuit boards and what have you. Now, I don't know anything about that stuff, but he does. And I also know that he knows a little bit, well, maybe more than a little bit of coding stuff. And he said in one of his videos that they re-released or perhaps I should get the wording right. They released a sort of modern version of the Commodore with a clear case and some very fancy LED lights. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he said in his video that they've managed to turn over $2 million with that, you know. So he has it all. He has a passion for the product. He has technical skills. And I think that he is clearly good at business as well, you know. And the fact that he managed to pull this deal out of thin air is incredible. So I would love to do a video in which I said, oh, he's going to blow it and I don't like this, I don't like that. That's not going to happen. I think the guy is awesome, and I cannot think of anybody on the earth today who is better suited to that job. He's the man. I think he's going to do fantastic. You watch this space. Now, hang on a second. Did I just say nobody on the planet Earth could do the job better? Well, there is one person who I think could do a better job, you know. But unfortunately, he's not around in the physical form anymore. And that is Steve Jobs. Of course, the co-founder of Apple, who's no longer with us. Steve Jobs orchestrated one of the best and biggest comebacks in the history of business when he returned to Apple. And some of the stuff that he did with Next Step, even though it flies under the radar, he was incredible at managing IT teams. And some of the stuff that team produced for Next Step, the computer, some of that stuff is still in the Apple computers today. And I wondered what a guy like Steve Jobs would do if he found himself at the helm with Commodore. So rather than me kind of going blah, 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 I took the time and with the help of He-Man here and the Sword of Power, I took some time to conjure up the spirit of Steve Jobs. And I asked the question, what would you do if you, Steve, were in charge of the new Commodore? And the answer I got was revealing, and I hope you'll find it interesting, because as soon as I heard, I thought, that's it. So you can consider this a free consultation from Steve Jobs himself. Anyway, don't take it too seriously, of course, but nevertheless, the following is what I believe Steve Jobs would do if he was in charge of Commodore. And I really hope this message makes it to the new CEO of Commodore, because I'd love to know his thoughts on this. So here we go. Look, the nostalgia factor's there. There's an audience who loves that stuff, and it's doing well with the one that was just released. And you don't need me to talk about that. But the question is, how do you get people sleeping out in the street queuing up around the building to buy the Commodore stuff. How do you electrify the marketplace and really bring Commodore back? You know the answer, don't you? We all know the answer. It's this. There has to be a Commodore phone. For better or for worse, that's the product. Now, it can't be just another Android phone with a different case and a blue background, you know. And it also cannot be some cheap thing that came in from AliExpress, you know. 30 quid a pop or something like that. It has to be something that addresses a legitimate need in the marketplace. Now, I have been a fan of the Retro Recipes channel for a while, you know. And I know that there's one issue where he feels the same as me. He's spoken about this, the new CEO of Commodore. And he's spoken about how devices like this are actually negative. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have a lot going for them. You know, GPS systems are nice. You can, you know, I don't know, book things on a calendar. You can read an ebook and all of that. But let's face it, that's not the destructive stuff. The stuff where people are really ruining their lives is doom scrolling, all of that nonsense, you know. And those algorithms that are being used on, you know, the social media platforms, those algorithms have pretty much been perfected. And as far as I can tell, you start all of this stuff and scrolling. And then it's like going into a time machine. And it's just, you know, you start and you're like, where did all the time go? And it's negative. Now, I've heard Christian, the CEO of Commodore, talking about how he'd like to have Commodore. Now, forgive me if my terminology or my phrasing's not correct, but he says honouring the past, but also giving people the technology that they were promised, the positive technology of the future. And I really think that he's onto something with that. I mean, that just speaks to me. It's so perfect, you know? So picture this. Imagine a phone that was, first of all, privacy focused, right? Because everybody's a little bit paranoid. Haven't you seen what's happening in the UK? They're arresting comedians at the airport, you know? What was it? 5 armed guards. It's a madhouse here, at least. And I don't think the UK is alone. And everybody's a little bit para. So if we could have a device that was privacy focused, now look at the size of this stupid thing. It's too big. So I'd like it to be a little bit smaller as well. And I would like it to not be Android. I would like it to not be Apple. I want a legitimate choice, a change. And I'm saying yes to the calendar, yes to email. I want to be able to read Kindle books. I want to be able to use a GPS. I'd like to be able to generate invoices, check emails, use a calendar, all of the good stuff, all of the stuff that helps with productivity. Let's keep that. But let's get rid of all of the negative technologies. And so, if you've ever been inside, lucky enough to be inside, is it a Ferrari F40? You know, or some really souped up sports car. Even some of the high-end Porsches. And I used to work for a place that sold very fancy cars, so I just happened to know this, right? When you go into the league of like super fancy cars like the Porsches and the Ferraris and the Lambos, you sit in there and you're surrounded by the paintwork, you know. They don't have air conditioning or anything like that. They are stripped down. And so what you get left with is the basics. And so it's one of the things that they do to make them so fast. So I'm visualizing a sort of phone version of this. Do you know what I mean? Like a supercar, or a phone version of a supercar. So all of the junk stripped down, which would be great for power consumption as well, by the way. Now, think about just a smartphone and all of the things that you could really do with just getting rid of, like push notifications, like those social apps. You know the ones. It's probably good if I don't say them here. I could get into trouble. But this is the visualization, and with its own operating system. Now here's the problem. Building an operating system for a phone is one of the most difficult things that you can do from a computational perspective. I've looked into this, and based on my extensive research, if you set out today to build a legitimate phone operating system that was an alternative to the iPhone, an alternative to Android, you're going to need about 50, I'm going to say 50, genius level developers. And you're going to need to have enough revenue to pay them full time for 2 years. So it's going to take 50 genius level developers 2 years to build the new operating system. Bit of a downer. However, some of us know that Commodore was once the biggest name in all of computing. In the 80s, certainly the early and mid 80s, Commodore was outselling Apple and IBM and everybody. There was nobody who came close. It was the biggest computer seller, or the biggest brand of personal computers on the planet Earth. And so that name has got a lot of clout. Maybe there's someone in our midst who already has all of those intellectual assets. I'm talking about the phone operating system, the privacy-focused phone operating system with all of the stuff I've mentioned. Maybe there's someone who already has that you could call upon and say, hey, hi, we're Commodore. Would you like to do something cool? And it just so happens there is. That's right, there is. And you know who I'm speaking about, don't you? BlackBerry. BlackBerry, now last time I checked, BlackBerry's still going, but they're not in the phone business anymore. But they have an operating system. And it's a completely distinct operating system. It's privacy focused. It's great for power consumption, all of the stuff that I've mentioned. I mean, it's funny, you know, I don't know if you've ever had a BlackBerry Passport. It was a phone this was the BlackBerry flagship phone of 2015. If you're not familiar with that phone, check it out, because it's very close to how I think a Commodore phone should be, you know. Now, if you got in touch with the people at BlackBerry and said, we're Commodore, we're thinking about releasing a Commodore phone, we've noticed that you've got an operating system there, would you like to join forces? I think this could be the IT deal of the century, and I don't see how they could turn it down. Now, you may need to do a little rebranding, a little freshening up of the interface, and all of that stuff. I'm quite sure of it. But if they could partner up with BlackBerry, that would be them 99% of the way there. Folks, it is possible. And so what I'm hoping for is that we're going to see, this is what I'm hoping. I have no insider information, by the way, but I'm hoping for a Commodore phone. A phone like the one that I've just mentioned, that's privacy focused, that's stripped down, that is built for productivity, and that is robust and built with the same sort of spirit that the Commodore 64 was built. If that was made, you really would have people sleeping outside in the streets for it. That's my opinion anyway. Actually, that's Steve's opinion. He's off. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. So that's what I think Steve Jobs would do if he was in charge of Commodore. It's just a little bit of fun. Don't take any of it too seriously. But that's what I'm hoping for. What makes this whole thing interesting is that I haven't really got anything else to say. I think that the guy, I don't know him. I don't expect any favours from him. I don't want anything from him. But the guy who is now at the helm of Commodore is very, very impressive. Everything that he's doing is right, as far as I'm concerned. And it's unusual for me because, I have one of those personalities where I like moaning about things, but I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think he's going to nail it anyway, with or without this advice. And I think it's really, really super exciting. So with that being said, I see that we have a few friends who have joined us here. It's ahoy to the great Giro from all the way in Iceland. How you doing, Gear? Nice to see you. Welcome. We have Joseph, Joseph Digital. Interesting. Who says, hi, I've just started programming a game for 6510 assembly. Oh, gee, here we go. There's some great courses on YouTube for this. Well, congratulations. I'm very much out of my depth. He says, I also have a ZX Spectrum next and have tinkered with Z80 assembly, but the tooling for Mac is terrible at the moment. Well, congratulations. That sounds awesome. And I must say, you're certainly a league or two above me. Let's see here what we got else. Kyle is here. Ahoy to you, Kyle. Gear is asking, did I get XP? I don't understand the question. Apologies. But Kyle is here. How you doing, Kyle? Nice to see you. K Cook, new name. How you doing? Very nice to see you. So K Cook says, just pay 100 for a year. Sorry, bad joke. Well, there's a joke there somewhere, but it just went over my head. And no sooner has he came than he's gone. But Joseph's here again. He says, have you heard of Graphene OS? It's exactly what you just described. Isn't that a Linux system that was made for the phone? It's assembly for a... Okay, it's all simple stuff. Well, I don't know anything about that stuff, to be honest with you. And if I start humouring that, I'm just going to get completely embarrassed. But you know what? Maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. But wouldn't it be great if they could get their own operating system and just, instead of just a regurgitation of Android or something, you know? I would really love to see it. And I'd love to see Commodore really bouncing back. I think it's possible, you know? Right, well, I think I am going to make it quite short tonight, and that's pretty much all I had for you. I just wanted a video in which I recognise this. If my good friend Mamemeister is around, I hope that he'll forgive me for not giving him a shout on this one. He has an excellent channel where he covers this type of thing, and maybe we can drag him on at some point and get his opinion. I'd like that, you know? Anyway, that's what I think of the thing. Thank you to those of you who left me likes. I'm about halfway through this little experiment. So for anyone who doesn't know, this has been a web development channel for a long, long time. But I decided about Well, a while ago, I decided I'm going to change the name and just start talking about other things for a while. And I thought I'll do that for 3 months and see how it's going. It's going pretty badly, you know. It's going pretty badly, but I'm going to finish what I started. I've got about another month and a half to go of this. I don't know why I'm looking at my watch when I say that, but I've got about another month and a half to go, and then at the end of that, I'll either go back to web development tutorials or I'll just go away. I'll just go away, and I'm okay with that. It's not that much of a loss, you know. So, for the 3 people who left likes, thank you. I'm watching that very closely. I'm looking at the feedback and the interaction and everything like that. And I will be making some kind of decision probably in the next month and a half, you know. So thanks to everybody who left comments and showed up and just let me know that you're alive. It really, really means a lot to me, especially these days. All right. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers. Now, how do I close this? All right. See you later.